This is Garden Variety, a horticulture podcast from Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. I'm Charity Nebbe. When you flip through the pages of your favorite garden catalog, your eye might be caught by a showy new rose or a hydrangea that promises not to disappoint, or any number of new varieties of your favorite plants. Before new varieties hit the garden centers or the catalogs, they need to be tested. One of the places that does that testing is Reiman Gardens in Ames. Reiman Gardens is an underwriter of IPR. Jessie Liebenguth is horticulturist at Reiman Gardens, and she's here to give us some insight into the testing process and, more importantly, to tell us about some of her favorite new varieties. Hello, Jessie.
Hi, Charity.
It's wonderful to have you here. And do give us a little bit of an overview about how testing of these varieties works.
Sure. So there's a lot of different programs throughout the United States and the world that do a lot of these trials. Reiman Gardens participates in several of those. So one of those is the All America Selections, or AAS. That's the old red and blue shield that like your grandma would have purchased her petunias through. It's updated. There's a prettier logo now. But what we do is compare new varieties against either market standards or previous AAS winners to find what's really going to be successful for the home gardener. That does extend into like farmers markets and small farm producers as well. But we're really trying to get people who are new at this and set them up for success.
All right. And there are organizations all over the country participating in these tests and trials, right?
Correct. So there's quite a few botanic gardens that are trial sites, as well as breeders. They obviously don't test, things that they're competing against. There's also lots of master gardener programs that have some of these trial programs. So they're all over the country and also in Canada.
All right. Well, let's get to the good stuff. Let's talk about some of your favorite new varieties. And we want to start with basil. Tell me about new basil.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of breeding work going on in basil right now, which isn't maybe quite as exciting as people would think. But here in the Midwest, we do have a really hard time with basil downy mildew, where you'll go outside one day and your basil looks great, and the next day it's completely defoliated, and that's because of basil downy mildew. It's the humidity, it's the spores traveling really easily and very far. So a lot of the breeding work is towards basil downy mildew resistance. So there are 2 AAS winners recently. One is called Treviso, and that's a national winner. These are both good for containers as well. So if you start planting it into containers, then maybe you'll finally actually use it for pesto this year, right? There is also another one called Piedmont, and that is a winner in the Heartland area, which is our area. Some plants are awarded a national prize, which means that it had good marks across the nation.
Right, it'll grow anywhere.
Exactly. And then there's also regional awards, which maybe it didn't perform as well in upstate New York, but it does perform here in Iowa. Some people think that that's not as exciting of a prize because, it's like not a national prize, but I think that really indicates that this is an excellent plant for us. So one of the judges put about Piedmont that they were harvesting with hedge trimmers and garbage bags because it's that prolific. So they stay nice. They're both very heat tolerant, hold up well, so they go into pesto really well without that oxidation. Slow to flower, like they're just both really nice basils, and that classic basil taste. And I guess I should mention that there are 3 more basils in trials this year. So we're going to have a lot of pesto. And one is a Lebanon and one is a variegated.
Okay. All right. So your dream pesto or your dream basil may be yet to come. If you had to choose between Treviso and Piedmont, which one would you choose?
I like Piedmont just a little bit better. It's more compact, so there's a smaller stem between the leaves, and that just kind of makes it look a little nicer, I think.
All right. You've got a new pole bean that you're excited about as well. Tell me about that one.
So pole bean Majesty is a purple bean. So I grew up eating strange colored vegetables because I think my mom thought, weird colors would intrigue us. I'm from the era of, weird colored ketchups. Um, and so this one is a purple pole bean. It's Majesty. It's very tender, very sweet. It will turn green when cooked, but I think it's tasty enough to eat off of the vine. And it comes from the same breeding line as Seychelles, which is a pretty standard green pole bean in the industry. So good disease resistance. It is a rabbit magnet, though, so I would fence it maybe even before you put the seeds in the ground.
All right. Well, fencing is good advice regardless. So Majesty is your favorite new pole bean. Heliopsis.
Yes. So All America Selections has not only annual flower and vegetable trials, but we also have a perennial trial, which goes over 3 winters. And so this Heliopsis is called Sole Giotto, and it is a compact double flowering Heliopsis. So it is about 20 inches tall. Common name would be false sunflower if you're kind of looking for that. It's covered in pollinators all the time, and it caught a ton of eyes, not only the public when it was in trials, but some of my industry friends would come through and walk our trials and say, "What's that?" And I say, I don't know yet. I can tell you in like a couple years if it wins, and it did. And so now I can tell everybody that it's just a gorgeous golden color. The bloom is just beautiful.
All right, the Heliopsis Sole Giotto. And now Dan Phileas kind of stole your thunder on your kale pick, but he's a kale nerd, and I take it so are you.
Well, and he reached out to ask what he should talk about, and so I fed him that. But I think it's worth talking about again because Ruby Boar is a gold medal winner, which means that it got outstanding marks across the country. And it won in both ornamental and edible trials, which is the first time that's ever happened. So
it's a really beautiful kale.
Oh, it's purple, and the color is so rich. It's compact, and so it doesn't get that weird, tall, leggy, weird alien shape that some do. We had some volunteer kiddos harvest off of it last year, and they defoliated it, and I went, ooh. And then it came back, and there was plenty to harvest the next week. So it's very resistant. It performed well in containers and in ground, and it like the color is just this very beautiful deep royal purple. So nice that when Dan was talking about it on the radio, my volunteers were listening and said, "Oh, well, we'd like to get that." And so I secretly bought some seeds and started some. And so if they're listening, there's going to be some kale for them to take home soon.
Oh, nice. All right. That's the Ruby Boar kale. It really is that good. You've got a dahlia that you want to talk about.
Yeah. I learn something new every day, even though I'm a professional. And one of the things I learned was that dahlias can come from seeds. Like I've always done a tuber, so I was very surprised. This one is called Black Forest Ruby. And the name is very descriptive. So the foliage is a dark black. It is beautiful. It's standard dahlia foliage. And so it's that serrated kind of leaf. And then it has ruby red blossoms, obviously. It's about 24 inches tall, and it doesn't flop over. So since you can start from seed, it costs a little bit less. And it grows pretty fast. So it's not going to be, a late crop or anything like that. I'd also like to mention that there are 2 series trials this year against or with Black Forest Ruby. And so there may be 2 more in the series that are winners.
All right. Black Forest Ruby dahlia. Let's talk about a petunia.
Yeah. So there is a standard pink petunia by a specific company that everybody knows. And Deco Max Pink is a great option if you don't have room for that other one, because the one I'm thinking about is about 6 feet wide. It takes over your entire space. It's huge. It has super in the name, so that's expected. Deco Max Pink is a little bit smaller. So if you still need that big pink petunia coverage, but maybe a slightly smaller monster, it gets to be maybe 24, 36 inches wide, and it's just covered in blooms. It doesn't lodge at all, so it holds up in rain and heat. And we actually have it planted alongside its kind of comparison this year. So if you stop by Reiman Gardens, you can come look for yourself and see which one you like better.
All right, side by side. That's the Deco Max Pink Petunia. It's almost kohlrabi season. You've got a favorite one of those, too.
Yeah, so there's a relatively new purple kohlrabi on the market called Constance. It holds better in the garden, and so it's resistant to cracking. So it'll give you the time to plant out several rows and then harvest it slowly without having to take it all out of the garden right away. You can eat the leaves. If they're young, you can eat them raw, or if they're a little bit older, you can steam them, but it stays, all the leaves are purple and everything too, so it's quite lovely. It could also grow in containers and is a favorite of my basset hound. He loves kohlrabi. He begs for it.
I've not even tried to feed kohlrabi to my dogs. I'll have to try this year. So that's Constance with a K. And you've got a couple of roses. And I know everybody wants to hear about the new roses.
Yes. So we are part of the Arts Trial Program, which is one of the rose trialing programs that filled the void that AARS left when they dissolved as a company. So they were formed just in 2012. So it's a pretty new company, but they have already released quite a few winners. What their evaluation standards are is the Copert climate. So instead of saying we're a zone 5, it says that we are a DFA, which is a humid, warm summer. So it should perform a little bit better foliage-wise. One of the roses that I really like is called Pretty Polly. Lavender, it's a polyantha. So if you remember the fairy that was really big some years ago, it's lavender, it's tiny, it's perfect for containers. It's just very cute and has great disease resistance.
All right, that's Pretty Polly Lavender, and we are out of time, but just tell us the name of the last one.
Yep, Sultry Night is a Master Rose winner for 2027, just announced.
Jessie Liebenguth is a horticulturist at Reiman Gardens in Ames. For more gardening information and tips, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Find out more at iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. Garden Variety is a production of Iowa Public Radio and Iowa State University Extension. It's produced by me, Erin Stile, Caitlin Troutman, and the Iowa Public Radio talk show team. For more garden goodness, please subscribe to our Garden Variety newsletter. Just go to iowapublicradio.org/garden. I'm Charity Nebbe. See you next time.